I don't need to destroy anyone. In Hollywood, just not bowing your head is enough to make them want to bury you alive.
Steve McQueen was the undisputed king of cool. On screen, he was the definition of a new kind of quiet, confident masculinity. He was the rebel you couldn't help but root for, the anti-hero who always did things his own way. For a time, he was the highest-paid actor on the planet. But behind that carefully crafted image, a very different story was unfolding. On the sets of his most iconic films, a pattern of difficult behavior emerged, one of intense competition and jealousy. It sparked feuds so tense they became Hollywood legends, leaving a trail of powerful co-stars fuming. But this isn't just a story about clashing egos. It's the story of why it all happened. The real reason for the on-set conflict reveals a surprising truth about the man behind the myth, a man whose need for control was driven by demons forged long before he ever stepped in front of a camera. The year is 1960. The cast of The Magnificent Seven has assembled in the dusty landscapes of Mexico for a high-stakes remake of Akira Kurosawa's masterpiece, Seven Samurai. At the top of the call sheet is Yul Brynner. After his Oscar for The King and I, Brynner wasn't just a star, he was practically royalty. He was the undisputed leader of the production, both on screen and off. And then there was Steve McQueen. A hungry rising star from TV, McQueen was cast in a supporting role with just 7 lines in the original script. From the very first day, it was clear this wasn't an ensemble piece for McQueen. It was a duel. A quiet, calculated war for the spotlight was about to begin, and it would ignite one of the most infamous rivalries in movie history. To understand the friction that would define so much of Steve McQueen's career, you have to start on the set of The Magnificent Seven. The battle lines were drawn between two very different men. Yul Brynner was Hollywood royalty, projecting an aura of unshakable confidence. He was a total professional who expected the set to run with precision. He was the established power. McQueen was the disruptor. A product of a traumatic childhood, he was abandoned by both his parents and spent time in the California Junior Boys Republic, a reform school for troubled youths. This experience left him with a deep distrust of authority and a desperate need to prove his worth. He saw Hollywood as a gladiator pit. The story goes that McQueen was so determined to be in the film, despite his TV contract for Wanted, Dead or Alive, that he faked a car accident, put on a neck brace, and claimed whiplash, just to get time off for the movie. Once on set, his frustration with his small role was obvious. Director John Sturges had promised McQueen he would give him the camera to make up for the lack of lines. It was a promise McQueen took to heart, and he began a campaign of relentless, subtle upstaging. According to co-star Eli Wallach, whenever Brynner was delivering a key line, McQueen would be in the background, drawing the eye. He'd fiddle with his hat, check the sun, or rattle his shotgun shells, creating just enough distraction to pull focus from the film's star. Brynner, a man used to being the center of attention, was furious. These weren't just improvisations. They felt like calculated acts of sabotage. The tension escalated. Brynner was known to be sensitive about his height, so he'd have the crew build a small mound of dirt for him to stand on in 2 shots, ensuring he always appeared taller. McQueen, noticing this, made a habit of casually kicking the mound flat every time he walked past it. It was an act of such audacious pettiness that it became legendary on set. McQueen later admitted the tension was real, saying, "We didn't get along. He doesn't ride well and knows nothing about guns, so maybe he thought I represented a threat. I was in my element. He wasn't." The feud wasn't just about screen time. It was a clash of egos. McQueen complained that Brynner's horse was too big and his ivory-handled pistol was too fancy in an attempt to grab attention. Brynner, for his part, became so obsessed with McQueen's antics that, as the story goes, he hired an assistant whose only job was to count every time McQueen made an unscripted move to steal focus. When newspapers reported on the feud, Brynner issued a terse statement. "I never feud with actors. I feud with studios. But behind the scenes, the animosity was palpable. The conflict on The Magnificent Seven helped make McQueen a star, but it also cemented his reputation as a difficult colleague. If the feud with Yul Brynner was a guerrilla war fought with props and glances, McQueen's next great rivalry was a Cold War. The year was 1974, and the film was The Towering Inferno. His co-star was a man who was, in every way, his equal, Paul Newman. By the mid-70s, McQueen and Newman were titans of Hollywood. Both were blue-eyed icons. Both loved fast cars, and both commanded huge salaries. But there was a key difference that gnawed at McQueen. While he was the king of cool, Newman was seen as the more serious, acclaimed actor. For McQueen, this was a rivalry that had been simmering for years, and now that they were co-starring, he was determined to achieve absolute parity. The battle began before filming. Both stars demanded top billing, and neither would back down. The studio came up with a unique solution for the poster. Paul Newman's name was placed higher, but Steve McQueen's name appeared first, from left to right. This awkward, diagonal billing became a famous symbol of their contentious relationship. Both actors were paid the exact same salary, $1 million plus a percentage of the gross. But for McQueen, money wasn't enough. Legend has it that he got his hands on the script, meticulously counted every line of dialogue, and discovered that Newman had 12 more lines than he did. McQueen reportedly tracked down the screenwriter and demanded he write exactly 12 additional lines for his character. He also insisted on having the final line of the film, a move that seemed to serve no purpose other than giving him the last word over his rival. On set, the atmosphere was professional, but chilly. A.E. Hotchner, a close friend of Newman's, visited the set and later wrote that a frustrated Newman called McQueen's line-counting stunt chicken shit. He allegedly told Hotchner, "Every day here is like going to the dentist." The competition even extended to their stunt work, with both men pushing their physical limits. This feud was different from the one with Brynner. It was a clash of titans, a struggle for dominance between two men at the peak of their power. McQueen's actions weren't just about ego, they were about a desperate need for validation. He didn't just want to be as big a star as Paul Newman. He needed contractual proof of it. So why? Why did Steve McQueen, a man who had it all, engage in such bitter rivalries? Most biographers believe the answer wasn't just ego, but a profound, crippling insecurity that haunted him his entire life. McQueen's childhood was a roadmap of trauma. Born to a father who left almost immediately, and an alcoholic mother who couldn't care for him, he was eventually sent to the California Junior Boys Republic, a reform school. Many believe this feeling of being unwanted, of having to fight for every scrap of attention, never left him. It fueled his ambition and his demons. Hollywood success didn't cure this. It magnified it. He seemed terrified that everything he'd gained could be taken away. This fear often manifested as an obsessive need for control. His feud with Yul Brynner was about visibility. As a newcomer with few lines, he likely felt overlooked, a feeling that echoed the neglect of his past. So, he fought for the camera's attention, refusing to be invisible. The war with Paul Newman was about status. By the 1970s, McQueen craved legitimacy. In his mind, Newman's critical acclaim made him better, a thought McQueen's ego couldn't handle. His demands for equal lines and billing were a search for external proof of his own worth. This pattern wasn't universal, however. While his relationship with James Garner on The Great Escape was tense, with Garner calling him a poser and more of a movie star than an actor, they remained neighbors and acquaintances, and some relationships were genuinely positive. On the set of Never So Few, Frank Sinatra took McQueen under his wing, and the two reportedly bonded playing pranks on each other. Sinatra even encouraged the director to give McQueen more close-ups, This contradicts the idea that everyone hated him, suggesting a more complex man who was both fiercely competitive and, at times, a loyal friend. The irony is that McQueen likely never needed to fight so hard. He had a magnetic quality on screen that audiences adored. But the wounded boy inside him could never quite believe that was enough. In the end, the story of Steve McQueen's legendary feuds is a tragic one. The King of Cool, an icon of rugged self-reliance, was in many ways a man defined by what he felt he lacked. His battles with co-stars weren't just about ego, they were often desperate attempts to silence the ghosts of his past. He fought to control every frame of his films because, for much of his early life, he had so little control. There's a story, perhaps more Hollywood legend than fact, that perfectly captures this. 20 years after their bitter rivalry, as McQueen was dying, from cancer at the age of 50, he reportedly made a phone call to Yul Brynner. McQueen thanked his old rival, saying, "You could have had me kicked off the movie when I rattled you, but you let me stay and that picture made me, so thanks." Brynner, ever the king, is said to have replied, "I am the king and you are the rebel. Prince, every bit as royal and dangerous to cross." It was a rumored moment of peace in a life defined by conflict. Steve McQueen won most of his on-screen battles, becoming an enduring legend. But the war that truly defined him was the one he waged against himself, a fight that fueled his iconic performances, sparked his notorious feuds, and ultimately reveals the heartbreaking insecurity behind the myth of the King of Cool. If you enjoyed this look into classic Hollywood history, be sure to subscribe for more stories about the legends and the legacies they left behind. And let us know in the comments who you think truly won the on-screen battle, Steve McQueen or Paul Newman in The Towering Inferno.